Welcome to Pixel Chatter, the show where we talk tech with the people who make it happen. I'm your host, Justin Lachovsky with Render Impact. With us today is Larry Zoll, Head of Strategic Partnerships for North America at the LED Studio. Today we're going to be talking all things LED tech, content creation, and strategic partnerships. Let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Larry.
Thanks for having me, Justin. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, great. It's awesome to have you. I know we've been talking about this for a while, so glad we can finally make it happen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, let's kick things off. For folks who don't know the LED Studio, maybe you can tell us a little bit about, what it is that you do and where you fit into the ecosystem.
Sure. So I've been talking about the LED Studio for a long time now. It feels like forever. The LED Studio, it's the biggest brand name in LED you've never heard of before. So we're a UK-based company, been in the UK for over 15 years. Came over to the US market about 4 years ago. We are a full-service manufacturer. We own the factories. We do project management. We do installations. We do the whole thing. Our CEO, Rob Bint, is our lead design engineer. He is the brains behind all of the amazing products that we have out there. The reason that we're on the cutting edge of so many different types of products, and where we fit into the market, is really all over. We pride ourselves on being an engineering first company. And being able to be solutions partners for whatever the application is. But we have a lot of cutting edge products, both from interior, exterior, narrow pitch, COB, GOB. We're all over the spectrum.
It's great to hear that you're engineering first. Obviously, I know you folks take a lot of pride in what you do. And, what's so interesting is when people hear or think about manufacturers, they're thinking, hardware only. But I know you folks take a lot more of an integrated approach to the way that you do things. And when I mean by integrated approach, I'm talking about, partnerships and working with all different kinds of folks in the space. Maybe you could tell me a little bit more about that approach and really what sets you folks apart.
We're certainly not the only ones in the market who work off of a full service model, right? But the LED market has gotten to the point where a lot of the technology has gotten very ubiquitous. I like to, and I think this resonates probably well with your audience, is I feel like we've gotten to a point in the LED space where the digital camera space was like 10 years ago, right? There was a period of time where everybody was racing for the number of megapixels, and at a certain point, the megapixels were what they were. Everybody got to a pretty standard baseline, and it started to be the niche aspects, the niche characteristics that really differentiated one brand for another. And I think that's where we're at in the LED space now. Many of the companies out there can bring a lot of different technologies to market, but the question is, how well is it engineered? What is the service like? What kind of partnerships are you able to build with your customers? For me, it's always been about not pushing boxes. I'm not interested in working with a company that's just shifting something from the factory to a job site, right? It's about building a partnership, coming up with solutions, being a part of the solution, the problem solving. I think we're very lucky that we're in a very tech forward industry, and to me that's very exciting. Ultimately, I'm just a huge geek, right? Like that's why I got into this. That's why I got into this industry. It's
Yep.
fun, it's different, it's exciting, and being able to be a part of that problem solving and see the results of that, and both from an end product result with the projects and the end result of it from a partnership standpoint with our clients. That's why we do it. It's exciting. It's high tech and it's fun.
It's funny. I also got in this because I'm also pretty geeky, and the technology aspect about it is just, a blast. So that's probably why we get along so well. So, let's take a little bit of a step back, Larry, and talk a bit more about your personal journey. What got you into the LED space? Was that by design or by accident?
No, definitely not by design. I haven't met a whole lot of people at my age now who have gotten into who are where they are by design. Obviously, it happens, right? But I started out as a theatrical lighting designer. That's where my background is. I went to college for theater. I have a master's in design. Well, about 2/3 of the way through my grad program, I realized I didn't want to sit in a black box for the rest of my life. That is a very difficult lifestyle. So I sort of leaned into the system design part of theatrical lighting and got into systems integration for theater. And from there, sort of progressed into the operations side of things. Got my first consulting gig, helping people understand how to run a digital signage installation. And spent 10 years in the consulting space building and designing digital networks, everything from retail to Times Square displays to stadiums, and growing a pretty substantial business on that side of things. And from there moved to the manufacturing side. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've built this business the way that we did, because I come from a very, very distinct, owner's rep consultant mindset, and that's the way that I want to work with our customers.
It's definitely an interesting journey that brought you here. Maybe you can tell me a bit more about what brought you specifically to the LED studio.
That would be Rob, the CEO. Rob and I have known each other, I don't know, it's got to be close to 10 years at this point. After the pandemic, I was looking for the next thing, and it was good timing. There was certainly probably some kismet involved. At the same time, Rob was looking to bring the LED Studio brand over to the U.S. And he and I share a lot of opinions and views on how we bring things to market, and it worked out really well. We agreed we wanted to bring this brand to the market and try and make something out of it, especially in a crowded space, and it's been a ride ever since.
And was there an aha moment for you where you realized that like LED was going to be that next thing for the way that people tell stories in different spaces now?
For me, coming from theater, ultimately, right? It's always been about that storytelling aspect of it. It's always, being a part of something that is communicative and being a part of something that help people to tell their stories is something that's really exciting for me. I never really got into projection. I guess I sort of got into the industry right at the right time when LED was starting to really gain a foothold and take over. And it just sort of it was a natural fit for me. Like I said earlier, I love the tech side of things. I love the engineering side of it. I love everything that goes into it. And it became a really great medium for me to help people tell those stories. For as long as I can remember, it's always been about helping people by giving them a path to tell their story, right? We never want to, part of the reason that I think I've been so successful through my career is that it's always about helping people tell their story through the technology, not letting the technology drive the story, right? And that's a big part of putting together successful installations.
I mean, you definitely hit the nail on the head there for me. Being on the content side of things, we love the technology, don't get me wrong. Ultimately for us, those are the guardrails that we need to, stick within when we're producing, the kind of media that we produce. But it's so great to hear, from the manufacturer perspective that, it's not about just the screen and pushing those boxes, but really like, what is the story that you're trying to tell here? Because at the end of the day, you provide beautiful canvases, and without, amazing content, it's just a black box.
Generally speaking, these are big investments for whoever's putting them in, right? And that's the amount of that investment, that level of investment has changed over time, obviously, but it's still typically speaking not something that most people are going to take lightly. And right. if they don't go into that investment eyes wide open and understand that the content part of it is what's really going to make that successful over time and really drive the success of that investment, the content's got to be it's a massive part of that equation.
For all you listeners,
by the way, you can use
I was just gonna say, for all the listeners out there, keep that in mind when you're investing in these projects. It's important to think about the content strategy. So thank you for that, Larry.
One of the first projects that I worked on as a consultant was a pretty big LCD video wall in a real estate developer's office. Mm-hmm. And a part of what I did as from an operations standpoint was we did a lot of the monitoring and watch these things to make sure that they were working long term. I had a camera on that installation for 6 years, and they never changed the content on it. And it's like I don't understand how you can put the time, effort, and energy into deploying something like that, and then not understand that if it's the same even after a few months, like people are just going to start walking by it and not seeing it anymore. And if that's the case, why are you doing it? Like, why are you putting all of this money behind this thing that ultimately, people are going to end up ignoring if you're not making it interesting?
You make me laugh because everybody's always like, ROI. What's the ROI for investing in this technology? Or what's the ROI for, putting content on screens? And, the answer at the end of the day is you're trying to, capture an audience or create an ambiance, whatever your, business objective is by investing in that technology. But it's not a set it and forget it solution. It's a constant evolution. You have to keep thinking about, well, what's next? What's going to get people looking up? For me, the biggest testament of what we do is, can you get somebody to look up from their phone for even a split second? Because, you've got content in, your on your phone and your pocket at all times. And let's be honest, everybody's glued to their phones these days. So, how do you capture that attention? And at the end of the day, that is the key for why you're investing in these things. And, maybe it's, I'm investing in it because, my competitor's doing it, or, my neighboring company down the street is doing it. But, if you really put thought into it, the experience is amazing. You really do capture that audience's attention, and they post about it, they talk about it, and ultimately I think that's a testament to what we both do, and that's what keeps people coming back for more.
Yeah, I totally agree. Look, I think we've gotten to a point, and I've talked about this a lot recently. Like, I think the potential for the market that we're in is obviously not limitless, but pretty damn big, right? And a lot of that is because we've gotten to a point where people expect to be able to interact or interface with their surroundings in one way or another, right? And if you're going to put the effort into giving people an avenue to do that, then giving them an attractive and fun and story-backed way to do that is just as important as the tech itself.
Totally. So, let's talk about a project, one of your favorite projects that you felt like really is a show of force in terms of what your team does that, maybe push the boundaries, creatively or technologically that, really resonates with you.
I won't mention it specifically by name because I want to be able to talk about something like some of the challenges that we had with it.
Sure.
But we worked on this project. It was an outdoor project at a theme park type environment. Where we had to account for not only the typical conditions that we work with on a lot of these projects, but also, as it turns out, like seismic issues and marine conditions and like just stuff that is so wild in terms of being able to have to consider from a guy who just likes to put pixels out in the world, right? Mm-hmm. And it took some time, and it took a lot of engineering, and it took like 25-foot deep pylons into the ground, but it was really exciting to see come to life, because it was an opportunity that I think we were really lucky to get. That we have, we've got a great sales team out there that has amazing relationships, and it's opened up a lot of additional doors for us to do work that I don't think we would have been able to do otherwise, because we're able to go out there and talk about how we're able to not just send you a display, how we're able to help out and do the full engineering and really be a part of it from start to finish. It was really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting to hear more about client challenges, but the physical environmental challenges you had to go through, that's definitely pushing the boundaries. And it sounds like your team was totally up for the challenge.
It was definitely tough, but it was very rewarding. It was very, very rewarding.
Cool.
It's exciting too. One of the things that always bothered me a little bit about theater is that, you put yourself out there and you put all this time and all this effort and this energy into a production, and it's very fleeting, right? Mm-hmm. It's something that people will see for a week or a month, or maybe if you're lucky, a year, right? But the type of work that we work on now, it's out there for a long time, and it's especially now. God, maybe this makes me say, I think I'm starting to get a little soft here, right? But especially now as like a dad, right? Being able to take my son to any one of a number of different places and like, look, that's like, we did that, right?
Yep.
You can point to that, and that's something that we did, and it's going to be there for a long time. I don't know. That's something that's really exciting to me. I know people are driven by different things, but being able to be a part of things that are out there in the world that people you'll never meet or see interact with on a daily basis, that's something that's very exciting to me.
I get so much excitement when I go to public spaces with friends and family these days, and I'm like, oh, I know who installed that screen, and I know who put the content up there. That was us. It's cool because not only do you get the professional accomplishment of deploying these things and having those relationships with all those people, but it's also like you actually get to see your friends and family experience that with you, and I think that brings a whole new level of engagement to the work that we do.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, for sure.
So, we've worked together a little bit, and I know that you folks at the LED studio do a lot of partnerships with integrators, design studios, and, even content creation studios. What is it that, makes strategic partnerships for you so important? And what are you really looking for when you, sort of start that relationship?
Partners help make the pie bigger. Right, it's about expanding your reach. It's about expanding, what you're capable of. And when we're working with different integrators who are, a very important part of what we do, when we work with content creators, like I was talking about before, who are obviously a very important part of the success of a project, it's about building relationships that help you. That give you the ability to bring more success to what everybody's doing. Like I said before, the market is huge, and there's so much potential, right? If you try and go it alone, if you try and push through on your own laurels or your own merits, you'll have some success, but you won't be nearly as successful as you would be had you taken the time and opportunity to go out there and develop relationships to be successful with other people.
It's so funny. Everybody's like, content's king, but we're still very much the afterthought, and, are brought in towards the end of the project once the technology's all spec'd out. So it's still a little bit disappointing that, we haven't been, pushed to the front of the lines just yet. But you're absolutely right. These kinds of relationships are important, and that's what brings us all together. I've always seen the market as kind of a three-pronged approach. You've got hardware, software, and content, and without bringing all three together, you're going to fall flat on your face, or at least get a subpar experience. So I'm really happy to hear you continue to focus on the partnership aspect of what you're doing.
I think we work, and maybe I'm biased, and you may have the same bias, but I feel like the industry that we're in is like, it's a weird small industry, right? And everybody knows everybody.
Yep.
And if you try and do it on your own, if you try and power through it by yourself, you're not gonna have the success that you have the potential for.
There's some folks who I know have been in this industry for a long time, and they end up just wearing different hats, and, either continuing to move from company to company or moving up within the company. But, it seems like a very homey industry to be in. People love to be here. And I'm excited to continue my career in the signage and pro AV space, and sounds like you are too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I don't know if you can recall a project that the technology and the storytelling came together as like this beautiful, powerful moment. Something that just was like kind of gave you goosebumps. You're like, wow, like this is something special. Do you have a project like that in mind?
Well, I mean, I think I would be remiss not to talk about the project we worked on together.
I mean, I wasn't teeing you up for that, but if that's something that you felt was
sure?
a goosebump moment.
I think maybe you were a little bit. No, we collectively just finished the live casino in Bossier City. And I think, look, I don't know if it was necessarily a goosebump moment, because it's the entrance to a casino, right? But I think there's some really technologically remarkable stuff that we were able to pull off there that I think is really unique. That is a project that started outdoors, horizontally on a ceiling, and transitioned interior to another ceiling product, and then transitioned into a vertical product going down the side of a wall, and was built as a single continuous canvas. And I think what we were able to put up there from a technology standpoint, transitioning from, I got to remember what the exact pitches were off the top of my head, but I think it was 4 millimeters to 3 millimeters to 1.5, something like that. And then from different actual technologies to from outdoor to SMD to GOB, I think just from a technology feat, that was a really, really impressive thing to be able to pull off from an engineering standpoint. And then I think at the same time, with the content that Render Impact produced, it was completely seamless. There was no visual distinction between the three technologies whatsoever. That was really, really impressive. It is really, really impressive when you go and look at it and consider all of the stuff behind the scenes that went along with it.
And just to add from our perspective, because I agree, I mean, I think the transition of technology that you folks did from the outdoor to the indoor and using different products, you created this amazing canvas for us to work on. And, again, we were brought in, towards the tail end of that installation, and, we were given a very tight timeline to put content together. And I know the team worked, night and day on putting that together for the client, and, pushing for design rounds and reviews fairly quickly. But I think the end result is fairly astonishing, and it was very immersive. I think it added a whole new layer to that entrance. And, at the end of the day, you're trying to grab people's attention as you're entering this facility, right? You want to keep butts in seats when you're in casinos. And I think that installation really does that very well. And the content is extremely engaging, from the, the live Louisiana marquee logo coming up to the underwater experience. It was just, it was great. I know the team really liked working on that one. So I appreciate you teeing that one up there, Larry.
Of course.
So, let's jump ahead a little bit, let's fast forward, to the future, because we've talked about cameras and, sort of the LED market being at where, digital cameras were, and, you get to a certain, megapixel level, and then things kind of, teeter out a little bit. And similarly, I think that's where we're at with smartphones now too. There was so much innovation, and then we kind of plateaued a bit. Yeah. But let's talk about where you think that, LED is heading in the next 5-10 years. What do you think we'll see in terms of additional innovation there?
There's a lot to think about there. There's so much happening at the moment, and it's happening quickly. Mm-hmm. Part of what has something that has surprised me over the last year is how quickly chip-on-board technology has really come to the forefront of what we're doing, and how quickly it became a large segment of the interior business that we're doing. Mm-hmm. It really I think highlights how quickly the industry evolves, right? And there's a number of different technologies on the horizon, including MIP, which will allow us to bring more COB like displays to the market in a much more in a much more effective way from a manufacturing standpoint. I think we're going to start to see a lot more narrow pitch outdoor displays start to pop up. We're already doing a number of outdoor narrow pitch projects, and I really think that's just the beginning. We're deploying a project right now all across Manhattan that's 4 millimeter outdoor, and is basically at pedestrian level. And wow. I think we're going to start to see a lot more of that. Really, what I think it's going to come down to is, how efficiently can you manufacture the displays that are going to drive the future. I think there's going to be a point sometime soon where, and I'm pretty sure somebody's already trying to do this, right? Somebody's going to come out with some sort of modular display from a consumer standpoint, right? But I think we're still a long way off from being able to go to Best Buy and just, grab a series of panels to come back to the house and put on the wall, right? The tolerances in the installation are too exacting to be able to for the average person to be able to do that. Right, but what I do think is that we're going to see a lot more. I think we're going to see the manufacturing and the prices for that start to come down, so that it's a lot more accessible for more Pro AV installations. Right, I talk a lot about most of our COB at this point is under 1.25 inches thick, which is crazy, right? And so I talk a lot about that type of product, the type of product that we're using in that instance as digital drywall, right? It's just another architectural finish. And if you think about using LED as an architectural finish in conjunction with a solid, I'm going to throw this back at you again, along with a solid content strategy to help blend that digital drywall into its surroundings, I mean, I really think that's where we're headed.
It's so interesting you bring that up. So we actually have a few projects where we've done that. It's the cross section between, digital content and, digital displays. And so we have a few projects that we've worked on already where, it's blending both the physical architectural, aesthetics of a building with the digital pieces and making them feel cohesive. In fact, and I know we didn't coin this term internally. I know we're borrowing it from somebody else, but we use it a lot internally, and we call it techerating. It's that intersection. Like that. So feel free to use it, because we're trying to keep pushing that trend.
I like that. Yeah.
It's the cross section between, digital displays, digital content, and interior design and architecture, because that's becoming more and more important. We did a project in Austin, Texas, called River South, where we actually have an LED wall that's architecturally integrated behind the lobby desk, and it's integrated into the wall really nicely. And originally the client wanted to put a physical plant wall there, but they knew maintenance on that would be a pain in the neck. So we actually created a series of different biomes that can play at each different day throughout the week, and it just blends so seamlessly into the architecture. We get a lot of comments that people actually try to touch the wall because they think it's a physical plant. So, there's a lot you can do now with that techerating. That's thank awesome. You again for you just teeing these good ones up today, Larry.
One of our great partners is a company called Forms and Surfaces. And they have a really big presence in the architectural finish space. I mean, they do like wall systems for like elevators and lobbies and stuff like that, where they build out. And I don't know a ton about this side of the market, but it's glass panels, and it's aluminum and metal finishes that for lobbies and architectural finishes and stuff like that. And we've started working with them more and more, where we're specifically looking at projects where there is a very clean transition from the physical to the digital, and blending that and meshing it is I think it's a cool space that's developing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're definitely on board with that and trying to get more into that, architectural side of things too. So I'm glad to see that's where you're headed with it. We're getting about to the end of our time here, but I just have a couple more questions before we go. What's the most unexpected or creative way you've seen LED be used recently?
Well, and I wish I could take credit for this one, but I can't. Maybe sometime soon, something similar. But I think one of the most interesting things out there right now is Cosm. I guess there's like 4 or 5 of them now. It's sort of like a mini sphere. They do movie nights. I think they do sports and stuff like that, and really transport you to a venue, to a place that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get to. And one of the things that surprised me the most about it is I was reading an article recently where they've struck a deal with, I think it was the NFL, where they're getting their specific camera people like on the field or at field level to film, or to get cameras at NFL games, from very specific viewpoints. And I think that's a fantastic business. I mean, I haven't been able to get to one yet, but everything I've seen, I mean, it seems like a great experience. I think it's there's a lot of potential for that.
I couldn't agree more. I've seen a handful of videos of people going to see The Matrix at Cosm. It was, incredible. I can see just how immersive that is. And I mean, it's a great movie to begin with, but to see it in like that total experience where like the LEDs also providing additional visual aids to make you feel like you're really in the movie. I love that one. So last question before we go, outside of the LED space and, even outside of Pro AV, if you'd like, what are you geeking out on right now?
There's so many different ways to answer that. Well, look, I'm deep into Borderlands 4 at the moment. It's a good way for me to de-stress at the end of the day. I got a good group of friends I play with. Some of whom come from the industry. We're out there on a regular basis. I hesitate to say how frequently. Getting out there and in Borderlands 4. I'm a pilot on the side. I love flying, mostly because it's really just another geeky thing to do. I mean, it comes down to buttons, right? I love pressing buttons and making things happen. So from a geeky perspective, that's where I'm spending most of my time.
I love it. So, Larry, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Where can folks find you, and where can folks find out more about the LED Studio?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Justin. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Larry Zoll. And you can find more out about the LED Studio at theledstudio.com.
Awesome. Thank you again for being on the show. There you have it, folks. Another episode of Pixel Chatter. I'm your host, Justin Lachovsky with Render Impact. This Chatterbox is out. Take care.